So when I first got my hands onto Mario Maker 2, one of the first things I did was to boot up the level editor and to check out the 3D-World style. And wow, was I disappointed at first. How are we supposed to transfer a signal without shells? How are we supposed to build clever timers without tracks? How do we change the state of a level without dotted line blocks? And worst of all, how the wiggler are we supposed to build combination locks without enemy stacking? So, needless to say, I was pretty disappointed. But recently, I took a closer look at this alienating game style nonetheless. And as it turns out, there are actually lots of crazy things possible in the 3D-World theme. We just have to approach it in a completely different way. So today, we're going to take a look at a couple of basic contraptions and Mario Maker shenanigans in the 3D-World theme, and we'll discuss how to pull them off. So you ready? Let's do this! Alright, so let's start with a simple and cute death trap. So here Mario finds himself in the middle of one of Bowser's many evil theme parks. But what is this? Oh no, he's entrapped in the middle of an evil attraction. The floor and the ceiling periodically change between being walkable and being plastered with ouching spikes. Mario's only chance to survive here is to carefully jump in between the moving track blocks. To make matters even worse, an evil winged Peepa with wings enters the arena after a while. Now a heroic plumber has to wall jump perfectly until the blaster timer to the right expires, and he's finally granted the shiny exit key that allows him to enter the exit box. Hooray! So how do we periodically change the state of the on-off blocks, and how does the timer work here? Well, the answer is surprisingly simple. Actually, bullet bills interact with blocks in a 3D-World style, which is a really cool mechanic and basically all that we need to make this work. This blaster on-off block setup to the left is all that we need to change the on-off block here. Simple. The cool thing is that we do not only use this signal to create an interesting wall jump challenge for Mario, but this signal is actually also used to create the key timer. This is what the blaster timer looks like. It's just a blaster on top of two state conveyor belts and an enemy carrying a key at the bottom. Every time the on-off block gets triggered, the blaster drops down one step until it finally crushes the poor bomb at the bottom. Next, let's try to create a different type of stage using the fact that bullet bills interact with blocks in the 3D-World style. Here Toad finds himself in the middle of a simple stage. There aren't many threats to our mushroom's health here. The challenge is something different. The challenge is to reach the end of the level before the determined bullet bill at the bottom does. If Toad fails to win the race against this bullet bill on an important suicide mission, then the exclamation mark block at the end of the level extends without our mushroom, and he has to take this door and to retry everything again. Poor Toad, it looks like he's entrapped in here until he finally learns how to race a bullet bill like a boss. Luckily, Toad is a quick learner, and so he manages to win the race on his second attempt. Hooray! This one should be really self-explanatory. Just a small tip, whenever we want to prevent our heroes to ground pound an exclamation mark block, putting two bullet blasters on top of it gets the job done. Awesome. I wonder what Toadette is currently up to. Toadette, wow, that kind of looks dangerous. Toadette, oh my god, the bull, please be careful. Oh wow. It looks like our competent lady mushroom survived that. Respect. For anyone wondering, that was just a horizontal moving form with 4 blasters on top of it. Anyway, time to add a new entry onto our dangerous list of evil. Let's take a look at that Don't Leave the Water stage. So here Luigi finds himself in the middle of the local swimming bath. But what is this? There are tons of evil piranha creepers creeping around, trying to eat everyone who was unlucky enough to go for a swim. To make matters even worse, there was a sign at the beginning of the stage saying that one isn't allowed to leave the water again after entering it. But it looks like Luigi really doesn't want to deal with those creepy creepers anymore, so he tries to jump out of the water. Sadly, that was the wrong call, because this triggers a P-switch and a blooper invasion in consequence. Ouch. So back to the beginning. This time, Luigi is extra careful to stay in the water and not to get invaded by bloopers once again. And would you believe it, Luigi manages to reach the exit box alive. Hooray! Okay, so how do we detect whether Luigi leaves the water? Well, we do it with good old anti-jump forms. The forms up there are set up at such a distance that they only become angry once our green hero is higher than this tile, which is the same height of the water level. The really cool thing here is how we process the Luigi jumped signal. So before we talk over this, just a quick disclaimer. If anyone wants to build a stage like this, don't build it like that. That's overly complicated and it works much slower than a setup like this would. The reason we built this in such an overcomplicated way is because the tech behind it is really interesting, but it is far from the best way to do it. So basically we have a really long input bus at the top of the stage that has one output node and several input nodes. This exclamation mark line here is our bus. This area is our output node and all the formed bob-omb bodies at the top are input nodes. So the output simply triggers a P-switch. If this exclamation mark block gets triggered, it pushes the blaster on top of the P-switch. Both are standing on top of icicles, which means they're on global ground and never despawn. Whenever one of the exclamation mark blocks in the bus gets triggered, the signal gets carried to the output. So this block destroys this bob-omb, which triggers this block, which destroys this bob-omb, which triggers, get the idea. The bob-ombs are once again on global ground, so that our helpful walking boom bots don't despawn. Finally, the anti-jump forms. Those simply explode a bob-omb once angered. The bob-omb explosions trigger one of the input exclamation mark blocks, and then the chain reaction is started until the output is triggered. I have honestly no idea what to actually use a contraption like this for, but maybe one of you wonderful ladies and gentlemen has an idea. Exclamation mark blocks are generally unbelievably powerful. They're basically our shell substitution. Here, for example, we use them to create an exclamation mark timer. As soon as Ouija hits his surprisingly resilient head against this block, the two exclamation mark blocks get triggered and change the position of the bullet blaster. Now the blaster lives directly on top of this P-switch, who is currently enjoying his last 10 seconds as a gizmo. Because as soon as the timer expires, the blocks retreat and the P-switch gets really triggered. Let's take another quick look at a cool little exclamation mark block trick. So here Mario finds himself on top of a combination lock. Those 3 blocks are his inputs, and Mario's job is it to hit them in the right order. If he hits them in the wrong order, then nothing happens, and our red Luigi becomes trapped for eternity. Luckily, figuring out the correct solution here isn't exactly rocket science, since the crates on top of the blocks give Mario a very good hint. It's this one first, then the one to the left, finally the one in the middle, and hooray! The path towards the exit clear pipe opened up. So how did we do this? Well, the answer is actually surprisingly simple. This is what the lock looks like. So in order to trigger the P-switch, we have to get this blaster here onto this P-switch. The first input we have to enter is the one to the right. This destroys those brick blocks and opens up the path for the blaster later. If we don't enter this one first, but the one to the left, then the 2 state blocks change the direction of the conveyors, which carries our bob-omb to the right and therefore makes it impossible to destroy the P-switch blocking blocks. The second input is the one to the left. That one just changes the direction the conveyors are moving to and therefore pushes the blaster to the right. Now the blaster is in range of the final exclamation mark block, which now pushes it onto the P-switch. Super simple stuff. As a side note, exclamation mark blocks are like the most powerful thing in the 3D-World style, and I'd love it if Nintendo added them to the old game styles in an update. They're just so unbelievably useful. Same for track blocks, but we'll see more of them in a second. But first, let's take a look on how to interchange the 4 main different forms of input in the 3D-World style. So 4 main forms of inputs are P-switch states, triggered power blocks, expanding exclamation mark blocks, and of course, the state of 2-state blocks. So this is how we get any other input by triggering a 2-state block. It should be pretty self-explaining. We basically make heavy use of 2-directional conveyor belts. Here is how to change an exclamation mark block into every other signal. Once again, super simple stuff. This is the table on how to transform a triggered P-switch into each other signal, which isn't high-level ELC manipulation either. And finally, this is how we convert a triggered power block. So this table is kind of interesting, since there is no enemy stacking in 3D-World. Luckily, we're still able to kind of stack enemies thanks to amazing hop chops. If a power block is triggered, all hop chops die, but stuff that bounced on top of them doesn't, which is the main trick we use to convert power block signals into each other input type. Alright, so that's signal transformation. I wonder what Toadette is currently up to. We haven't seen her in a while. Oh my god, she's Toadette-ly going to die here. Toadette, please be careful. You can't be. It's the. Oh wow, she did it. What a competent lady mushroom. For anyone wondering, this ghost house bookshelf death trap uses a small mechanic to change the direction of the conveyors at the bottom. It uses a bully clock. This bully basically bullies this poor bullied on-off block for as long as Toadette is in range, which periodically changes the 2 blocks' state. Alright, so one final design is left. So here Luigi finds himself in the middle of a lovely and peaceful ground theme stage. Everything is beautiful here. The wind is quietly breezing around. birds are chirping in the distance, there are no enemies to be seen. It's probably the best stage Luigi ever got thrown into. Until he walks into the middle of this room. Because as soon as he reaches the middle of this room, stuff becomes a bit more dangerous. Because as soon as Luigi reaches the middle of this room, the ceiling starts to, unfortunately, collapse, and a gigantic Meowser starts to attack. Suddenly, dangerous bullet bills drop down, and even the space Luigi has to work with becomes smaller. Now it is Plumber versus as a cat-dressed turtle. But luckily, Luigi took the bullet dodging lessons serious back in plumbing school, and so he's able to dodge all the dangerous flying projectiles until the hidden timer finally expires, and he's rewarded with the exit key. Hooray! Okay, so this is what the setup for this little trap looks like. This little bob-omb sets the on-off block to off as soon as it gets loaded, and this little bob-omb here flips it back to on as soon as it gets loaded. The bob-omb activates as soon as Luigi is in the middle of the room, which is how we start the whole contraption. The main star of this setup is this lonely track block. Track blocks stop to move if an on-off block is flipped, so only once Luigi is in the middle of the room it starts to travel, and then it simply pushes everything in its way forward, which destroys the bob-ombs and in consequence makes the blasters fall down. That's actually the whole trick. At the end we have one of those small exclamation mark block timers we took a look at before. Once both blocks get triggered, they transport the blaster to this spot, where it rests until the blocks retrieve again, and then it destroys the bob-omb and grants us the key. Awesome. So here we have it, different tips and tricks and contraptions for 3D-World. As it turns out, there are actually a couple of cool things possible in this game style, and I'm pretty sure we only took a look at a fraction of the possibilities here. So anyway, with that being said, thank you for watching this little video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and maybe you feel especially three-dimensional today and want to hit the subscribe button as well. I hope that all of you have a wonderful day and to see you soon. Goodbye!